all so much for watching. If you're just tuning in, this is our Holiday Stress Management 101 workshop. We hold free webinars every month, differing topics. And yeah, just thank you so much for joining us. So today we're going to talk about managing stress during the holidays, what that looks like, and just going over practical tools of actually being able to utilize these things when the time comes. All right. And just a little bit about us. So I am Lindsay Zogheb. I'm the practice owner of Inner Purpose LLC. We are a private practice counseling in Collingswood, New Jersey. So we offer in-person and telehealth sessions, and we see individuals, couples, families of all ages. And we specialize in anxiety and depression and trauma. So as of right now, we are accepting new clients. We do have 8 therapists on staff. I think that was everything I wanted to say about that. Yeah, that's that. All right, so moving right along. So to ask the big question, why are holidays stressful? I feel like it's kind of self-explanatory. I'm sure some things are popping into your mind of why the holidays are stressful for you. And if we go into those reasons, I mean, there's so many reasons. This list doesn't even cover it, right? But there's extra spending. So financially trying to afford everything, spending time with family, of course, that comes with positive, but also a lot of negatives too. Busy schedules, expectations, past trauma reminders or grief reminders, and loneliness. So keeping this in mind, thinking about some other things that might come up for you. And then not only these things, but it's how we interpret these events as well. So how does this make me feel about myself and my life? So we usually interpret these things sometimes in a positive light, but also negative. So if you're not having as much fun as you should be over the holidays, you might think, oh, I'm being ungrateful. People use that term a lot. Or if I'm not able to afford all the things that I want for my family, I'm a failure because I should be farther along in my career or financially than this. And that's obviously not the case, but those are the thoughts and the beliefs that we have about ourselves already that are just underlying under the surface that we might not even know they're there. And the holidays, definitely, it's a more stressful time. Bring those things out of us. So we're going to go into a little bit how to manage those expectations and also those beliefs about ourselves. And then what do you do to reduce stress, right? We have the healthy ways of reducing stress and the unhealthy ways. And I think a lot of us do a lot of these, healthy and unhealthy. So some healthy ways to reduce stress over the holidays, of course, exercising, journaling, meditating, deep breathing, talking it out with a family, friend, or a therapist, engaging in the hobbies that you enjoy. And the unhealthy ways, especially over the holidays, like life is hard enough as it is on a daily basis. So when you add the holidays on top of it, it can just make things more heavy. So we might tend to use substances more. People engage in self-harming, isolating, sleeping too much, or maybe not sleeping enough, holding it all in, isolating, excessive spending, or using more screen time. So of course, our goal is to increase the healthy ways we reduce stress and decrease the unhealthy ways that we reduce stress. Because if we think of it like these are all a Band-Aid, that's all it is. And while Band-Aids work in the short term, if the wound is deeper than the Band-Aid then can hold, if it needs stitches or needs physical therapy, these things aren't going to work. So if we think about also too, if we have this bucket and the bucket has a hole in it, and if the unhealthy ways we reduce stress is just water, we're pouring water into the bucket to try to feel full, but the water has a hole in it, or the bucket has a hole in it. So we have to find a way to plug the bucket, or else we're just throwing all these things into a bucket that it's going to all drain out. So all right, so our ways of coping. So we have number 1, solving the problem. Number 2, changing how you think about the problem. Number 3, accepting the problem. And number 4, stay miserable. So I'm going to go into all ways that we can go through these different ways of coping. So, and then number 4, of course, is kind of funny, is stay miserable, but that is a way of coping, is you kind of recognize that you're not in a good spot, but you're really don't want to do anything about it. And I've definitely have days where I've just stayed miserable. Like I know the skills, know what to do, how to do it, but I'm like, you know what? Today's just not the day. I choose to stay miserable today, but knowing that I have the choice makes me feel a little bit better that that's what I'm choosing to do. So of course, we're going to focus on the first three. So going into solving the problem. So I think a lot of the time when we're met with stress or anxiety, it's difficult to problem solve. It's like our logical brain goes offline. But if we think about, okay, how are we actually going to solve this problem? So for example, if we take not having enough money to purchase all the gifts that you want to for people over the holidays. So we know the problem. That is the problem. We don't have enough money. We want to buy people all these gifts. And that's usually where people stop, is we define the problem and then you feel so stuck. I mean, stress can be so paralyzing that we stay stuck there. But once we have these steps already laid out for us, we can kind of follow that. So we identified the problem, brainstorm solutions. All right, do you want to sign up for Instacart over the holidays to make a couple extra dollars? Do you want to just make people homemade gifts, or even just a card and say, hey, dude, I didn't have it. There's these different ways we can brainstorm all the solutions, no matter how good or silly they may sound, get it all out on paper, picking a solution or multiple solutions, implementing it, and then reviewing the results. Did it work out? If it did, great. If it didn't, okay, why not? And like not beating ourselves up because of it. So that's something we'll definitely go over too. If it doesn't work out, because you're doing your best. So that is just some basic problem solving to try to, if you have a problem, let's try to solve it to get to the solution you need that would make you feel better. So if that's maybe not an option, or you want to choose to do something else, we can change how you think about the problem. So we have thousands or hundreds of thousands of thoughts a day, some positive, some negative, some neutral. But our thoughts affect how we feel, and our feelings affect our behaviors, and then our behaviors affect our thoughts again. So it is a constant cycle, and we can make it a positive cycle, or we can get stuck in this negative cycle of thinking a negative thought, it making us feel down, and then affecting how we behave, whether we don't do the things that we love or we isolate. And it's really easy to get stuck in this cycle. But what we can do is we can break this down. So if we have a situation, so I just picked a silly situation. I always use this, for example. You spill coffee on yourself first thing in the morning when you get into car to go to work and you're already tired. I'm sure a lot of people can relate. I've done this, maybe because I've done this so many times to myself. So the thought that we could have is, today is going to suck, right? How am I going to feel after I think that thought? I'm going to feel defeated. I'm going to feel depressed. My behavior, what might follow, is I might be less productive at work. I might skip my daily walk, but my behavior is affected by the way that I feel. And it just started with that one thought. Sometimes it's usually multiple thoughts. So if we can just change that one thought, it's the same situation, but the new thought would be, that sucks. That's okay. I didn't want to wear this outfit anyway. I can make a new cup of coffee when I get to work. Today can still be a good day. And then my new emotion, I'm still probably going to be annoyed I'd spilled coffee on myself, but it's more neutral, right? I'm not feeling so bad about the day, or like almost dreading doom to come for the rest of the day. And then my new behavior, I go about my daily routine. So that way, when I get home from work, I'm like, all right, today actually was a decent day. But you can see how, like, in a split second, things can go so differently. So if you think about how to apply this to yourself, maybe what's a recurring situation that happens to you often, or maybe even just something that happened to you today, and then thinking about what's the thought, emotion, behavior you had, and then thinking about, all right, what's a way to rewrite that? What is the new thought, the new emotion, and new behavior? And I guess the one caveat I will say to this is, this works, I would say, like 70% of the time. The times where this doesn't work is, one, we don't practice it enough. If we're too emotional and we're too charged up, we might need to create some distance between us and the situation before we're able to process it like this. And it does take a lot of practice. And then the next thing is like severe and significant trauma reactions. Your brain goes offline when you're experiencing a significant emotional reaction, specifically related to trauma. So there'll need to be some few steps in between this, like grounding techniques, just trauma processing, which is a whole separate thing. But I like to have this caveat, because I think when people are just presented with this type of therapy, so it's called cognitive behavioral therapy, it doesn't work for everyone. But for little situations like this, it can work, but it does take a lot of practice. And then some days, you just don't want to do it. You know that this is available to you. You're kind of like, no, I'm having a hard day. I'm going to choose to stay miserable. And then going into this a little further, we have our cognitive distortion. So this is ways in which our thinking can get twisted. It's not rational thinking, it's irrational thinking, but we all fall victim to this type of thinking because we're human and we shape our current perception of the world based off past experiences, and just kind of sometimes our mood. So let me show you these cognitive distortions. All right, so I'm going to go through each one. So it's just different ways our thinking can get twisted. And if we're able to identify the cognitive distortion, we're going to be more able to try to challenge it, or just identify and say, oh, that's what this is, and not believing everything that you think. So we have magnification and minimization. So exaggerating or minimizing the importance of events. So one might believe their own achievements are unimportant, or that their mistakes are excessively important. So it's basically when someone tells you, wow, you did a really good job today. And you might say, oh, I just got lucky. It's no big deal. That was nothing. I had so-and-so helping me. But then on the flip side of that, if you make one mistake, you might think about it all day and like beat yourself up for it. So it's almost like you have a magnifying that one big thing, or making it a big thing if it's just one mistake. And then under that umbrella is catastrophizing. So seeing only the worst possible outcome of a situation. And that can, that's like a subset of magnification of this, just one bad thing is going to happen based off little information that you have. The next thing is an overgeneralization. So making broad interpretations from a single or few events. So instead of saying, I felt awkward during my job interview, the thought is, I am always so awkward, right? It's just not accurate. But our brain kind of goes to that extreme sometimes. Magical thinking. So the belief that acts will influence unrelated situations. And this is actually a pretty common one. I am a good person. Bad things shouldn't happen to me. And unfortunately, bad things happen to good people all the time. But we just have this belief, it's called the just world effect, that in a just world, in an ideal world, bad things wouldn't happen to good people. But unfortunately, the world that we do live in, that is so random and chaotic, like bad things do happen to good people. So kind of keeping that in mind, so you don't put yourself in this category, well, I must be a bad person, or I must have done something to deserve this. Like, not at all. Like, these things are all random. And it's just how we interpret it. Personalization, the belief that one is responsible for events outside of their own control. So thinking about the event, my mom is always upset, but then she would be fine if I did more to help her. Well, no, those are two separate things, but we personalize it to make it about ourselves, that we should have done something, just kind of being hard on ourselves for not doing more, or that we did something wrong. We go to jumping to conclusions. So interpreting the meaning of a situation with little or no evidence. So it's kind of what I said about the coffee thing, right? I was fortune telling, the expectation that a situation will turn out badly without adequate evidence. Had no evidence that the day would go badly. I just had the thought that today sucked. And I actually was kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I made the day suck because I had the thought, and I was fortune telling, thinking like the day would go badly. Mind reading, so interpreting the thoughts and beliefs of others without adequate evidence. So the example I like to use for this is, say if you're texting a friend, they don't text you back for a couple days, and you think, oh my God, they must be mad at me, I must have done something wrong. Well, no, we're just mind reading, thinking we're trying to get inside their heads, and we can't do that. So our brains try to fill in the blank of what it possibly could be. And it's always helpful to look at the other interpretations of the event. Well, they could be going through a hard time. They could have not seen the text. They could have just forgot. So there's so many other interpretations of the event. And then we have emotional reasoning. So the assumption that emotions reflect the way things really are. So I feel like a bad friend, therefore I must be a bad friend. When in reality, that's just how you feel about yourself. I'm sure your friends actually think you are a really good friend. But just because we're coming from this emotional side, I feel this way, it must be true. And it's most of the time not the case. The next thing is disqualifying the positive. So recognizing only the negative aspects of a situation while ignoring the positive. So one might receive many compliments on an evaluation, but focus on a single piece of negative feedback. So it is very similar to the magnification or minimization of the earlier one. The should statements, this is a pretty big one. The belief that things should be a certain way. I should always be friendly. That should just adds, it's just too high of an expectation, something that whether you should always be like this or you should have done this, it just most of the time when we add those should statements, it just leads to disappointment and guilt. Even if we're referring to other people, oh, she should do this for me. Because that's not always the case. And I say always. Yeah, so eliminating should statements. I always like to tell clients oh, I should have exercise every day. Maybe change it to I would like to exercise every day. Is it going to happen? No, but some people maybe. But just trying to be more realistic with yourself. The next one is all or nothing thinking. So thinking in absolutes such as always, never, or every. So I never do good enough job on anything. This is also referred to as black and white thinking. So just using those never, always, every just isn't realistic because it's speaking in extremes and absolutes when there's so much variability in different situations in yourself. Yeah, and so a lot of these cognitive distortions are formed by our past experiences. So whether it's trauma, just upbringing from our parents, this and those events form how we think about ourselves and the world. So almost if we're thinking about perceiving the world and ourselves through these blue glasses. So if especially and these cognitive distortions are very present in these blue glasses, and when we're able to challenge them and also process our emotions and past trauma, we can take those glasses off and see the world for what it actually is versus viewing it in this distorted, like sometimes dark way that we can. All right, we're going to go back here. Okay, managing expectations. I always love this one. So what are your expectations for the holidays? Whether that is for yourself, for your loved ones, for just how events should go, how many events you should go to, whether it's fun holiday things, how many gifts you should give people. What are those expectations? So really taking a moment to think about what those are for yourself, for others. Because going into the holidays, if you have more of an idea, oh, I tend to like put things up on a pedestal if it should be this amazing thing. And sometimes it's not, and that's okay. I think, of course, I put the Hallmark picture on here because Hallmark does. They show these perfect families doing all these fun things and how they can afford to do all those fun things when in real that's not reality, right? So they have like one little fight, but they make up and everything's fine, or they fall in love. And it's just, I love the movies, but I also hate them for that reason because they do put your expectations so high. Even for myself, I feel like I used to have the expectation for Christmas to be a time where you really get to connect with family. And while that is ideal, great, what I found was it wasn't always the case. It's not like anything would go wrong on that day, but I guess I was picturing something that just like didn't happen on a regular basis. So why would one day change all that? And it was just like kind of a regular day where we opened gifts and then hung out for a couple hours and went home. So just thinking about what are your expectations? What are you bringing to the table? And then like when you're in the moment on Christmas Day, when you're going ice skating, like what are my expectations and does it match reality? Like 90% of the time probably doesn't. But as we practice it, we can get better and better at making it more realistic. So that way we can enjoy ourselves. I think that's why you're all watching this today, is that everybody just wants to enjoy their life more and enjoy the holidays more. So sometimes it takes some internal work to get there. Okay. So big question. How do I know if my expectations are realistic? I think the biggest thing is flexibility. Is it flexible if one thing goes wrong or it's just different than you were expecting? Was on a different day. Is it flexible? Because sometimes when we want that control and we have these big ideas in our head, if it's not flexible, that's when we know the expectations are a little too high. And going into this, radical acceptance can actually be really helpful when your expectations are too high or when things just don't go as planned and you're trying to cope with that. It's one of my favorite things to do and also to teach. But I think at first it can be a little difficult to learn, but once you learn this skill, it is so valuable. So what is radical acceptance? Radical acceptance is the simplest forms. You don't have to like it. It doesn't have to be right or fair, but you're accepting it because that is the current reality and you can't change it in this moment. Doesn't mean you can't change what the situation is in the future, but this is what's happening right now. And we're not going to fight reality. We're going to acknowledge reality and accept it to prevent our own suffering. So how does that, what does that look like? What does that mean? So if we have pain plus acceptance equals pain, right? Pain is still painful, it hurts, but when we don't accept it, pain minus acceptance equals suffering. Suffering is when we sit in the pain and it hurts so much worse because we feel like we're suffering. So I think there's gonna be two examples with this that I'm gonna use. So I think a lot of people can relate to sitting in traffic. No one likes to sit in traffic, I don't think. And a lot of us have an issue with it. And I did for years. It's a little embarrassing, but I would scream, curse, and cry. And by the time I got home, I was so miserable when, whether I got all upset about it or not, I was still going to be sitting in that traffic. So once I learned this concept, it really took some thinking of like, okay, I don't want to feel like this when I get home anymore. So I'm going to accept that I'm sitting with traffic because I can't do anything about it. So I turn up the music, I roll down the window, maybe take some breaths or take a look around you at the trees and just take in that moment, because you're going to feel so much better when you go home versus like getting yourself all amped up. And that's exactly what I did. So ever since, I have not got angry about traffic anymore because it's not worth it. So I think a lot of these things we want to start with using this on smaller situations first, especially because it takes a little bit to learn, like traffic or when it's raining, and then building it up to larger things, like whether it has to do with family or past events, things like that. So just another example of what it can look like versus when we accept something and we don't accept it. So if we accept it, it is raining. Yep, it is raining. Versus not accepting it, it is raining. Well, I don't like the rain. I wish it wasn't raining. My day would be better if it wasn't raining. My day is ruined. Every day is just like this. It is always like this. Why does it always rain when all I wanted is for it to be sunny? You see the difference of how much different you're going to feel versus, yep, it is raining, to all this, the cycle that we can get brought into, the negative cycle of like ruminating on something when both situations doesn't change. It's still raining because we don't have control over that. And I think a lot of this is way easier said than done, but it is possible. I think that's one of the things that initially is a barrier for people, is like it's such an abstract concept to try to actually practice and utilize. So I think my suggestion would be, if you're having trouble with this, like if it's connecting with you but you don't know how to do it, there are radical acceptance meditations that will walk you through the steps of what to do and just getting more in tune with yourself so you're more easily able to do it. So that'd be my recommendation. And just keep in mind, just start with the small things like rain and traffic, and then work your way up. And when you're having trouble mentally getting there, radical acceptance, there's ways you can physically, like, I guess, symbolize radical acceptance or practice it. So this is called half smiling and willing hands. So half smiling, I always can't not smile at it because it's a little silly, but you're just gonna point the tips of your mouth up like this. Just that one little half smile. And then your willing hands, so they're up, they're open, and open, it's kind of looks like you're open, you're willing to accept what comes to you. Very relaxed posture. And this is one way we can try to promote and practice radical acceptance. Like there's some days where you just don't want to get out of bed. And like you're working on accepting, well, I have to get out of bed because I got to go to work. So if you lay in bed, half smile, willing hands, give yourself maybe like a minute to sit there like that. See the difference. Even if it's 10% different, it's going to feel better than not radically accepting. So this is just one way to radically accept with your body. All right, going into savoring the moment. As I go for a drink of water, we can savor this moment while I catch up. Okay. So savoring the moment. Do I have a slide on this? Oh yeah, okay. I think the idea is to enjoy the holidays, right? Whether it's like a moment in time, with family, or just doing something fun, or a favorite meal. So the way we do this is through mindfulness. And mindfulness can be practiced in a lot of ways, not just through meditation. That's one way to practice mindfulness, but there's so many ways throughout our day we can incorporate it. So basically, mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. So the three things we need for mindfulness of the intention of we're trying to pay attention on purpose, the actual paying of attention, observing the moment of thoughts, feelings, sensations, smells, sights, sounds, and the attitude is non-judgmental. So if I just take, for example, you're trying to sit there, enjoy a moment, you're actually enjoying yourself, and then anxiety kind of creeps in, your stomach hurts. And you're like, why am I anxious? So the observation can be, I am anxious. When we add a judgment to it, we can be, well, why am I anxious? I shouldn't be anxious. What did I do to, like, why is this happening? And we kind of fixate on that. That's it, saying like, this shouldn't be here. And instead of judging it, we can kind of just say, we can observe and say, I am anxious right now. Sometimes it's hard to be in that space of like not trying to take control of it, but kind of just acknowledging it. But really taking in like whether you have a favorite smell. So sitting there and lighting a candle, just sitting there, slowing down for a minute or two, taking in that smell, driving around at the Christmas lights, really taking in what the lights look like. They twinkle, are they set to music, taking in what the music sounds like, just the air around you, taking in your whole experience. Because I think a lot of the time we are on autopilot because life is hard and we're busy. We got shit to do, right? But I think actually, the shirt doesn't go all the way up, but I got this tattoo specifically for this, and it says, not this event, but because of just living in the moment, the soul is here for its own joy. Like, yes, we have shit to do, life is hard, but like it's also about just enjoying it. So like taking those little moments, even if you have a hard day, taking about like, what are those few things that went well that day, and like focusing on those things, because it is so easy to get wrapped up in the negative, and our brains are actually programmed to focus more on the negative because it's a survival thing, like just evolutionarily how we were brought to be as a civilization. But yeah, just focusing on those little things and being mindful of your breath. So if you can just stay with me for a second, I'm going to do, it's a little bit of a paradox. I'm going to do a quick breathing exercise because the whole point is you're supposed to slow down. But if you just put your hand on your chest, put your hand on your stomach, and you're just going to breathe in through your nose, your chest is going to rise, fill with air, feel what that feels like. And then big exhale out. Feel your chest deflate, your shoulders relax a little bit. And if we focus on that, we do that a couple times, we will be more in tune. And this literally does slow our heart rate down so we can capture more of the moment, capture more of what it feels like to be in our bodies. And a lot of the time we are stressed and we don't want to be our bodies. We want to avoid because we want to feel things differently. We want to feel better, but actually how to feel better is to feel through it and not go around it or above it or under it, just to feel through it. So I went on a whole tangent there, but yes, savoring the moment and mindfulness is super helpful, especially during the special moments in the holidays. All right, practicing gratitude. So there's so many ways you can do this, and I think it really depends on the person. So for me, I have an app that goes off every day at 9 o'clock, and you can change the time, but it says, what 3 good things happened today? So I will write, my son gave me the biggest hug, had a really good thing to eat, watched a good show, or if I had a really bad day, I was like, you know what? My cup of coffee was amazing in the morning, right? Just even if it's the littlest thing, you can always pick 3 small things that happened throughout the day. And just research shows that people are happier when they practice gratitude. But I guess my one caveat to that is a lot of people think, or if someone's ever told you, oh, you're not being grateful, you have a roof over your head, you have a healthy family, what do you not have to be happy about? And you can still feel your feelings, especially your pain, and still be grateful and practice gratitude. So we're not discounting your pain. Your pain is still real. And we can practice gratitude that sometimes helps with the pain. But I don't like the idea sometimes people get the wrong idea and like almost invalidate themselves. Well, I shouldn't feel upset because I have so much to be grateful for. Well, both things can exist at the same time. And that's a really beautiful thing when that clicks in your head of I can be struggling with all this and this can be really stressful and I can practice and I can be grateful because most of us practice gratitude throughout the day and we don't even know it. So one thing that really brings this home, especially with the people in our life, is this video. I think it's a 7-minute video that I want to show you. And I've never not cried at this video. So I'm gonna play it, you see what you think. And I think it'll really bring home of like what gratitude's about and how we can practice it in different ways.
Shut up.
What? Wait.
Oh, he's gonna be so embarrassed.
What makes you happy? Having fun? Hanging out with friends? Delicious food? Making money? Well, consider this. Psychologists have scientifically proven that one of the greatest contributing factors to overall happiness in your life is how much gratitude you show. Yeah? Think about that. Go ahead and marinate on it for a second. You can thank me later if you want. It'll make you feel better according to this study. You go ahead and click on it and read it if you want. Or you can keep watching because we read it and we thought it might be fun to test out for ourselves. We gathered a selection of volunteers to act as our subjects. First, we gave them a test. They didn't know what we were looking for, but it gave us a pretty good idea of their current level of happiness. We asked them to close their eyes and think of somebody who was really influential in their life, somebody who did something really amazing or important for them. We had them write down as much as they could about why this person was so important. Now, a lot of them thought at this point the experiment was over, until we really put them on the spot and tried to get them to call that person and read what they wrote about them. Thank you, Jessica. We're gonna have to have you call your mother. So who was that right person for you?
Person is my sister, Erica.
We're gonna give Erica a call.
Okay.
Who'd you end up picking?
Friend of mine, Craig Ains.
Her name is Dora.
My college accounting instructor.
Really? Is this somebody you're still in touch with today?
No, I'm assuming that he's passed on.
That's a
To
shame.
the great beyond.
You up for it?
Yes.
What would you say if we called up Dora?
Oh, we can try, but she lives in Britain.
In Britain?
Oh, no, number by heart, dude. This is awful.
That's fine. I don't know my mom's number by heart.
If it's true that those who are going on are looking down on us, maybe he read my chicken scratch.
Hey, sweetheart.
Hey, how you doing?
Yes.
You got a second? Where you at, in the hotel?
I am. I'm in the hotel. You scared me when you asked if I had a second
No.
or something's wrong.
No, I'm on like this little TV show, and they told me to talk about the person that influenced me the most, and I picked you, and they're making me call. They're making me call you.
Oh, wonderful.
Hi, you've reached Craig. I'm not here right now.
At the tone, please record your message.
Oh, come on.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi.
Erica. It's me.
All right, so I got to read you this paragraph. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead,
All right.
sweetheart.
All right. The person that influenced me the most would be my mother, Marlo Dawson. She is a single mother of 2. She is a very hard worker and dedicated to her family.
Hey, Craig. This is Loie. This is going to be a funny little voicemail, so I hope you enjoy it.
I'm so sorry for calling you at 4 o'clock in the morning.
I have to read this to you, okay? And you can't say anything, or I don't know. You can respond, but I probably will just keep going. Okay?
Is everything okay?
Yes, but I have to read this out loud to you.
The person who has had the biggest impact on my life, outside of Jesus Christ, who is responsible for my existence, was my college accounting instructor. He had a joy and enthusiasm for his job like no other teacher I have ever known.
I love her to death, and she keeps me going with positive talk. She is a woman that knows what she wants and won't give up until it is achieved.
Oh, something. I don't know what. I'm about to cry because it's so beautiful. I have to say that it's wonderful.
I first met Craig on an independent feature film set in Whitefish, Montana. I recently have been sending Craig a lot of positive thoughts as he suffered a series of health problems. Despite his medical problems, he's continued to work and take pleasure in the small things in life, like sitting quietly with his wife Janine on the porch.
Erica is my older sister and my best friend. Sometimes it even feels like we are twins. She's my #1 fan and my #1 supporter. She makes me happy because despite all my mistakes and my decisions, she still loves me no matter what.
Your friendship is everything. And you are one of the most important person in my life.
Even when she has a kid and many children, I will love her more than her kids. Okay, maybe not. I will never forget when she flew 3,000 miles at the drop of a phone call to save me from a breakup.
And being blessed by having a son like you. I love you.
Bye.
Why did you do this?
I don't know, because they made me do it.
Thank you for picking up. Bye, sweetie.
And then they're like, here, you're gonna write this letter. And then I wrote like this whole long ass letter, which, you know, I like don't write. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, guess what? Now we're gonna call her and you're gonna read her this letter. And I was like, what the
Before we let them go, we gave our subjects one more happiness test. Now, we mixed up and rephrased the questions so they didn't know they were taking the same test twice. For those who took the time to actually write something down but couldn't make the phone call for whatever reason, we saw happiness increase between 2 and 4%. Good, but not exactly mind-blowing. Now, for those who actually picked up the phone and personally expressed their gratitude, we saw increases between 4 and 19%. So either way, expressing your gratitude will make you a happier person. But you want to know something really interesting? The person who experienced the biggest jump in happiness was the least happy person who walked in the door. What does that mean? That means if you're having a particularly tough time, trying this out will more likely have a greater impact on you. Trust me. I'm in a lab coat. In fact, while you're at it, film it and upload it to us, and we'll do something awesome with it. I'm Julian, and this has been The Science of Happiness.
Open cake, subscribe.
All right, so that one gets me every single time. Yeah, so I mean, clearly practicing gratitude can go a long way, not only for you, but for also the other person as well. And it can be something maybe I'll circle back to when we talk about coping with loneliness. But for now, we will go on setting boundaries. So I feel like some people are better at this than others. And it also depends on what was modeled to you, what behavior was reinforced growing up, whether it was people pleasing or needing to set really strong boundaries to not let anyone in, to keep yourself safe. But setting boundaries with people around the holidays, I think, is important. And setting boundaries with yourself, we'll definitely touch on that too, because people sometimes want a lot from you, whether it's your time, your effort, your help to do things, and you just might not have it to give, and that's okay. And being able to set that for yourself, to almost just give yourself the self-respect you deserve, and almost to communicate that as well to other people, that you're not a doormat, basically. Because sometimes, I'll admit it, sometimes I'm totally a doormat, and I'm working on it by setting boundaries. And yeah, so if we think about the type of boundaries that people have, so it's definitely on a spectrum, and we can have different boundaries in different areas. So someone might have rigid financial boundaries, but healthy sexual boundaries, or porous emotional boundaries. It really depends on the person and the situation. So think about which ones align for you. So rigid boundaries is someone thinking about like they have this bubble, this really hard bubble that people can't penetrate. So it would be avoids intimacy in close relationships, unlikely to ask for help, has few close relationships, very protective of personal information, may seem detached even with romantic partners, keep others at a distance to avoid the possibility of rejection. And then we have on the opposite side of the spectrum is porous boundaries, overshares personal information, difficulty saying no to the requests of others, over-involved with other people's problems, dependent on the opinions of others, accepting of abuse or disrespect, and they fear rejection if they do not comply with other people. Someone with healthy boundaries values their own opinions and doesn't compromise their values for others, shares personal information in an appropriate way, so does not over or undershare, knows personal wants, needs, and communicates them, and then accepting when others say no to them, and then also being able to say no to other people when needed. So seeing where you fall in one of these categories, and this can really help you moving forward. Okay, which ones do I need to be a little bit more porous with in order to get closer to healthy, or which ones do I need to firm up a little bit because they might be a little too porous. And why setting boundaries with others and yourself are important. It's just giving yourself that time and space to be a person, and that you don't owe anything to anyone else. And when you start setting boundaries, people might be upset, but it doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. It means they're not getting what they want. I think two ways that this can go is, I'm sure a lot of the people, family, friends, might take some getting used to that. Oh, she's setting boundaries for themselves. And then they'll eventually get it and respect it. And you can even communicate that to them that, hey, I'm starting to set more boundaries. If this is what things are a little different, this is why. And then there's other people that won't get it and maybe won't be around for a very long time in your life, because if you want to stick to this and respect yourself more, and they're not okay with that, then what does that say about the relationship? So not everyone will be upset. And then the some that are understanding, it's because they most likely have healthy boundaries, and the people that have overly negative reactions most likely don't have healthy boundaries. And a barrier for people setting boundaries for themselves is because they set a boundary and there's a negative reaction, or the perceived negative reaction. And then maybe they've had negative reactions in the past, which led to this negative belief about themselves. And then, just like we did with our triangle, it circles, I'm pointing with my finger like you can see, it circles right back to the front. If you have a negative belief about yourself, like, oh, I can take on more than the average person, or like my needs aren't as important, then you don't set boundaries. And then it kind of gets just, I guess the word of the day today is cycle. You get stuck in this cycle, which we're trying to break. So the one ways that we can healthily set these boundaries is through Dear Man. So this is a step-by-step process to get you to ask more for what you want, but in a healthy way. Because I think sometimes when we're not used to setting boundaries, and then we finally do set a boundary, it's usually when we're at our wit's end, and we use a lot of you statements like, you do this, you do that, and the other person gets defensive. But if we speak with I statements and stick to the facts, the person's more likely to be receptive, and we can stay more in a level headspace. So the first step is to describe. So clearly and concisely describe the facts of the situation without any judgment. So I'm going to use this for a holiday one. You have asked me to host Christmas Eve at my house with 3 weeks notice. Express. Use I statements to express your emotions. I feel overwhelmed by not be giving a lot of time to prepare, and having to cook for so many people by myself. If you assert, clearly state what you want or need, and be specific when giving instructions or making a request. So I need help cooking some of these dishes. If you would be able to cook 2 or 3 of the main dishes, that would be so helpful for me. And then reinforce. So reward the other person if they respond well to you, or even before they respond at all. Like, I would appreciate this so much. This would help me out so much. And then if they respond well, smiling, say thank you, and kind gestures work well as reinforcement. And then mindfulness. So these are the dear is the first 4 steps. The last 3 are more just to keep in mind of like the essence of the conversation. So we go back to that word mindfulness. Mindfulness is being mindful of your goal, means not getting sidetracked or distracted by other issues. So we're not going to talk about last Christmas or the Easter where, they criticized your cooking. We're just talking about this Christmas, what you're going to do and how you're feeling about it. Appearing confident, so using body language to show confidence, even if you don't feel it. And that could look like standing up straight, making appropriate eye contact, speaking clearly, avoiding fidgeting. And the last thing is negotiating. So knowing the limits of what you're willing to accept, but be willing to compromise within them. So it might be, I'm willing to host Christmas this year if I'm able to get some help, but next year I don't think I'll be able to host the holidays at my house. So you can see how much better that would be received by the person, instead of, you asked me so last minute, I can't believe I have to do this, but like, it's the same thing, it's just how we word it. Yeah, it's going to get perceived a lot differently. So what I've actually done is I've actually practiced this before I like brought something up to my husband. I've written out each of the steps, because when you're in that emotional mind, it's so hard, like it's so easy to just bring out the you statements. But if we actually have a plan going in, and then the more we practice this, the easier it'll come when we need it. And now you can just jump right to, and you'll know the steps. But this will be super helpful in getting your point across, and at least a helpful tool to get you to set boundaries, especially if you're nervous, having this going in, even bringing the paper and say like, hey, I'm setting a boundary, I'm super nervous, and just being your genuine true self with it. So hopefully this will be helpful moving forward. And then setting boundaries with yourself. So setting boundaries with yourself is just so you don't go overboard, right? Whether it's with eating, spending, drinking, committing to too many things, social commitments. I think sometimes when we get excited about things, or when we're trying to avoid, we do these things. Or we just really like food too. There's that, and you're in the moment, right? We talked about savoring and mindfulness. Sometimes you're so in the moment that you want to keep enjoying it, but then we enjoy it too much. So just knowing that like some of this stuff is going to happen over the holidays. Like I'm sure there's going to be a day in December I am going to overeat, because there's just so many good food. But setting the boundaries with myself that, okay, maybe that's one day, but I don't have to eat 10 cookies a day because it's the holidays and I'm going to start in January, right? Because I'm just doing that for my own health. So I don't feel like crap the next day, because a lot of time it seems like a good idea. And then until it like really hits you and it's like, oh crap, I shouldn't have done that. So just checking in with yourself and seeing, what are your boundaries with yourself? Are they rigid? Do you not let yourself go and have fun, right? Do you have like, you're like so tightly wound up and so rigid, or is it so porous they have a hard time limiting and setting boundaries with yourself? And then somewhere in between. So kind of just keeping an eye on that. All right, we are moving right along. So we are going to be talking about coping with loneliness. And even though this skill isn't specific for loneliness, I think it can be very helpful because it's an emotion regulation skill. So, and especially like there's a lot that can go on in the holidays, whether you feel lonely because your family lives, out of state and you can't get together, whether you're sick and you can't get together. I know that's happened to us in the last few years, that your family members are no longer with you. Or you're in a room full of people and you still feel lonely. So thinking about what we can do in those moments. So accumulating positive emotions. So building as many positive experiences into your life as you can and filing them away for later. Try to regularly incorporate more and more positive experiences into your day over time. So that could be really anything. It could be spending time with the people that you truly feel loved and respected by and have fun with. Could be just immersing yourself in some of your hobbies, or just relaxing, watching a show, anything that gives you positive emotions. The next step to that is building mastery. So do something every day that makes you feel competent and confident to build mastery. The more you do, the better you'll feel as you'll build the confidence in your capabilities. So building mastery is like kind of a subset of accumulating positive emotions, because you're going to get positive emotions for doing things that you feel like you're good at. Like for me, I would say my mastery is I like to write. So if I have some time by myself to write for one of the books I'm writing, or usually I love going to work. So building mastery, that's a mastery skill for me, but it's going to be different for everybody. Like my husband, he likes to play chess. He just recently got back into that. And he gets so happy when he wins a round of chess. And if he's at a family gathering, he needs to take a step away, and step outside, or just be with himself for the next 10 minutes. He can do that. He can pull that out. And really engage in something that he likes and he's good at. And number C is cope ahead. So when you're in distress, it can be really hard to remember your skills. So coping ahead is preparing for a skill as a skillful action plan to use for when you get emotional. So thinking about, a lot of the times we wait till the last minute. We almost know something's going to happen if I get lonely around this time of year, but we don't want to think about it. We want to avoid it. So we don't think about it until inevitably the time comes up, and then we're left like scrambling, trying to figure out how to cope. And that's usually when we cope negatively. So if we come up with a plan of, all right, what positive emotions can I try to elicit, and who can I get in touch with? What hobbies can I engage in? What exercise do I need to do? Whatever you need to do to cope. And what usually are your go-tos, just trying to cope ahead and thinking about those a little bit beforehand, just to have a plan in place for when your distress does arise, because ultimately it does. The holidays are a stressful time, even if it can be enjoyable as well. All right, coping with grief and trauma triggers. So I could probably give a whole presentation on just this, but just to sum it up in one slide, is really just identify how you're feeling and why you're feeling this way. Because again, you're most likely going to want to avoid the feeling, not be in touch with it. And I'm asking you to go the opposite way. Identify why you're feeling and why you're feeling this way. Let yourself feel it, but keep a balance between feeling it and ruminating on it. So ruminating on just thinking about it over and over and over again. So if you find that's the case, that's when we need to cope. So we can let yourself feel it, and to prevent yourself from ruminating on it. Step number 3 is coping. So distraction does work in the short term. So if you are feeling really distressed at like a 6 out of 10, and we want to prevent it from getting to a 10, or just feeling super depressed or even suicidal or verge of a panic attack, distraction works in the short term. In the long term, if we use that for everything, it maintains your symptoms, but it's good for distress. So whether that is watching a show, putting on your phone, counting the ceiling tiles, I actually have a whole list. So if you type in distraction techniques, a bunch of stuff will pop up. Some other ways to cope that are more in the moment are meaningful activities, connecting with someone, and grounding yourself using mindfulness. So if you know you have a hard time around a certain time of year, whether it's grief, trauma, or because of loneliness, try to plan ahead, like, okay, let me call this person on this day, or making sure someone's available so you can connect with someone. And then if you feel like, so trauma kind of takes us, right, even if we're reliving it emotionally with our bodies or through flashbacks or nightmares, it takes us back to the past. And what we want to try to do is ground ourselves with mindfulness in the future, the present, that we are here, we are safe. And when we when we know that we're in the present, it signals to our body that we're safe because we're no longer living the trauma. And then the 4th step is consider talking to someone if these are recurring, which most likely these issues don't resolve themselves most of the time. So it would be beneficial to talk to someone about this. So, these trauma triggers don't come up as much anymore, or it doesn't come up at all because you were able to process it. And what that looks like, I think I'll have a whole nother webinar on processing trauma and why it works and how it works. So that'll be for another day, but it is super helpful. All right. I mean, the biggest thing is remember your self-care. Like I said at the beginning, the holidays, or life is hard enough as it is, but when you throw the holidays on, it just makes things a little bit heavier. But if we keep with the core principles of, all right, what do I need that's going to fuel me, whether it's physically or emotionally, to get me through this time? Not only get me through it, but like even just enjoy it. Even if you can't enjoy most of it, enjoy parts of it, right? So what that looks like, so this is please skill. So just going to the basics of treating physical illness. So that just means taking your medication every day, going to the doctors when you need it, balanced eating, avoid mood altering substances, balanced sleep, getting exercise. And again, these things are a lot easier said than done, but even if you just get one, like after a couple of days of bad sleep, making sure you go to bed early that one night to catch up. And because these aren't going to be 100%. Like all of them are not going to be 100% all the time, because it's like almost nearly impossible. But if we just keep them in check and check in with yourself, like yesterday, I ate pretty bad yesterday, but my body felt better that I actually had vegetables for dinner, and I feel a difference today. And like, it's just those little things can actually go a long way. And then I like to do a please skill add-on of, if we were to add a couple more categories, what is your environment like? If there's things in your environment that have to change in order for you to get in a better headspace, what kind of people do you surround yourself with? Do they respect your boundaries? Do they listen to you? Do you feel respected? What do you spend most of your time doing, including your work and your free time? We spend a third of our life at work, and if you don't like what you do, I know you're not always going to like it, but think about, do you need a change? Or with your free time, do you have a hobby, or are you spending a lot of time scrolling on social media? Because that's going to affect how you feel. And then what content do you consume? So are you a person that looks at all the other people and what they're doing on the holidays with loved ones, whether going ice skating, and kind of comparing yourself, but kind of feeling stuck on the couch, and you can do those things as well. Or are you watching a lot of the news, which can be like a lot of fear and depressing stuff on there? So just keeping that in mind. And I think a lot of what today is just being more aware of what you're putting into your body, physically, mentally, content, all of the above, and then deciding like what to do about it, because we have those 4 ways of coping, right? We have the solving the problem, changing how you think about the problem, accepting the problem, and staying miserable. So sometimes the choice is yours. I feel like sometimes with trauma and grief, sometimes that kind of overrides it. So I will definitely say that. But it's just about just being more in tune with yourself and trying to decide what's going to be best for you. So thank you all for coming. I'm going to make sure to upload this video, so you're going to have it on YouTube. And then if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out. My one recommendation would be, even if it is not with us, is if you are interested in counseling, reaching out now instead of waiting till January, because January gets really busy and places book up. But if people reach out now, December is a little slower. And if we are not the best fit for you, we will find the best fit for you. So our website is innerpurposellc.com. If you have any questions or need any additional resources for the webinar, some of the things I talked about, please feel free to reach out. But I hope you all enjoy your holidays and take good care of yourselves. Thank you.